The plane lurched sideways at 30,000 feet, and Harper Kingston's coffee splashed across the armrest before he could grab it. His first thought not about the turbulence, but about the woman sitting 3 rows behind him, whose gasp he'd heard even over the engine's sudden sputter. He'd been on this flight 100 times, maybe more. His Gulfstream G650 was practically a second home, the leather seats molded to his body from countless trips between New York and Los Angeles, London and Tokyo, wherever his construction empire demanded his presence. At 29, Harper had built Kingston Development from a single apartment renovation into a billion-dollar company that reshaped skylines across 3 continents. He knew the sound of healthy engines, and this wasn't it. The pilot's voice crackled through the intercom, steady but urgent. "Mr. Kingston, we've lost the starboard engine. We're going to need to make an emergency landing. There's a regional airport about 40 miles northeast. I'm diverting now." Harper unbuckled and moved toward the cockpit, his 6'3" frame navigating the cabin with practiced ease. But he paused, turning to look at the only other passenger on this flight. She sat rigid in her seat, hands gripping the armrest so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Her eyes were closed, lips moving in what might have been prayer or just controlled breathing. He'd barely noticed her when she boarded in New York 20 minutes ago. His assistant had mentioned something about a last-minute addition, someone who'd paid an astronomical fee to hitch a ride west, because every commercial flight was booked solid due to some conference. Harper had been too buried in blueprints for the Seattle project to care. Now, watching her fight visible panic as the plane shuddered again, something in his chest tightened. "Hey," he said, his voice cutting through her fear. "We're going to be fine." Her eyes snapped open. They were green, he noticed, the color of sea glass, and currently wide with terror. "You don't know that." "I do, actually. Mark's been flying for 25 years. He's landed planes in conditions that would make this look like a sunny afternoon. And this bird has more safety features than most commercial jets combined." Harper kept his voice level, authoritative. It was the same tone that had convinced investors to trust him with billions, that had rallied construction crews through impossible deadlines. She stared at him for a long moment, then nodded shakily. "Okay. What's your name?" Riley Jensen, Harper Kingston." "And I promise you, Riley, we're going to land safely. You're going to make it to wherever you're desperately trying to get to, and this is going to be nothing but a story you tell at parties." The plane dropped suddenly, and Riley let out a small scream. Without thinking, Harper slid into the seat across from her, leaning forward. "Look at me. Just keep looking at me. Tell me where you're headed." "Sacramento," she managed. "My sister's getting married tomorrow. I've been in New York for work, and I was supposed to fly out yesterday, but the deal I'm closing ran late. And then every flight got booked because of some medical convention. And your assistant said this was my only option to make it in time. And now I'm going to die in a plane crash and miss her wedding anyway." She was rambling, words tumbling out in a rush, but Harper found himself focused on every detail. The slight southern lilt to her voice that she mostly suppressed. The way her dark hair had started to escape from its professional bun. The fact that she'd called it a deal, which meant she wasn't just some wedding guest but someone who closed deals. Someone with a career important enough to keep her in New York until the last possible moment. "You're not going to die," he said firmly. "What kind of deal?" "What?" "You said you were closing a deal. What kind?" She blinked at him like he was insane for making small talk during an emergency landing. "I'm a mergers and acquisitions attorney. I was finalizing the purchase of a pharmaceutical company by a larger conglomerate. 48-hour marathon session." "That why you look exhausted?" A surprised laugh burst out of her, breaking through the panic. Did you just tell me I look terrible while we're possibly crashing? I said, exhausted. There's a difference. You actually look like someone who just pulled off something impressive and hasn't slept in 2 days. The plane leveled out slightly, and Harper glanced toward the cockpit. See, we're stabilizing. Is that normal for emergency landings? Mark's compensating with the other engine. We'll come in a bit rough, but we'll come in. He paused. So your sister's getting married. You too close. Riley's death grip on the armrest loosened fractionally. Very. She's 3 years younger. We grew up in a tiny town in Georgia, and I basically helped raise her after our mom died when I was 16. That's young to take on that responsibility. Dad did his best, but he was working 2 jobs. Someone had to make sure Rebecca actually did her homework and didn't date the wrong guys. A faint smile crossed her face. She's marrying someone perfect for her, actually. He's a teacher, patient, kind. Everything she deserves. The plane shuddered again, and Riley's eyes squeezed shut. Harper reached across and took one of her hands, peeling it gently from the armrest. Her fingers immediately clamped onto his, but he didn't flinch. Keep talking. Tell me about growing up in Georgia. There's nothing to tell. Small town, everyone knew everyone. I couldn't wait to leave. But you went back for law school. No, I went to Columbia. Both undergrad and law school. I haven't lived in Georgia since I was 18. Your sister stayed. She did. She teaches 2nd grade in the same elementary school we attended. She's happy there. And you're happy in New York. It wasn't quite a question, but Riley opened her eyes and looked at him appraisingly. I am. I like the work, the pace, the fact that I can be anonymous in a crowd of millions. Why are you interrogating me? You're not thinking about the landing anymore, are you? She paused, seeming to realize that her breathing had steadied, her panic receded. That's manipulative. That's effective. There's a difference. He threw her words back at her with a slight grin. The intercom crackled again. Mr. Kingston, we're about 10 minutes out. Buckle up, both of you. The landing's going to be harder than normal, but we've got emergency crews standing by as a precaution. Harper released Riley's hand and moved to the seat beside her instead, buckling in. Stay loose. If you tense up, you'll hurt yourself. How do you stay loose during a crash landing? It's not a crash. It's a controlled emergency landing. Completely different thing. But his jaw was tight as he stared out the window, watching the ground rise to meet them faster than it should. Riley must have noticed. You're worried. I'm cautious. There's a difference. But he glanced at her and found her watching him with those sharp green eyes, and he amended, Yes. I'm worried. This is my plane, my responsibility. If something happens to you because I invited you aboard. I paid to be here. Handsomely, I might add. My assistant arranged it. Still my plane. The airport came into view, small and rural, with fire trucks already lined up along the runway. Harper's stomach clenched. When we touch down, it's going to be rough. The right landing gear might not deploy properly without the engine. We might skid. You're terrible at reassurance. You're a lawyer. You appreciate honesty. Riley surprised him by laughing, a real one this time. Fair point. The ground rushed up. Harper found himself reaching for her hand again, and she grabbed on without hesitation. The wheels hit asphalt with a scream of rubber and metal. The plane bounced, slammed down again, and started to veer right. Harper heard Riley's sharp intake of breath, felt her nails dig into his palm. The pilot fought the skid, and for a terrifying moment, Harper thought they might flip. But then the nose straightened, the remaining engine cut, and they were sliding, finally screeching to a stop about 20 feet from where the runway ended in a stretch of scrubby grass. Silence. Riley was shaking. Harper realized he was too, adrenaline flooding his system. We're down. We're okay. She turned to look at him, and he saw the exact moment the fear transmuted into something else. Relief, maybe, or the giddy euphoria of survival. Then she was laughing and crying simultaneously, and Harper found himself doing the same, and somehow they ended up with their foreheads pressed together, both of them breathing hard. "We didn't die," Riley whispered. "Told you. You were terrified too." "Never said I wasn't." The pilot emerged from the cockpit, looking shaken but unharmed. "Everyone all right?" Harper pulled back from Riley, suddenly aware of how close they'd been. "We're good, Mark. Hell of a landing. Hell of a flight. I'm sorry, Mr. Kingston. The engine just went. No warning, no indicators." "I've never had that happen." "Not your fault. The important thing is we're all safe." Harper unbuckled and stood, offering Riley a hand. She took it, rising on unsteady legs. Emergency crews were already surrounding the plane, and within minutes they were being helped out onto the tarmac. The afternoon sun was blindingly bright after the dim cabin. Riley stumbled slightly, and Harper steadied her with a hand on her lower back. A paramedic approached. "Anyone injured?" "Just shaken up," Harper said, "but check us both out." They spent the next 20 minutes being evaluated, answering questions, giving statements. Harper kept one eye on Riley the entire time, watching as color slowly returned to her face. She'd pulled her phone out at some point and was typing frantically. When the officials finally cleared them, Harper walked over. "Texting your sister, trying to figure out how to get to Sacramento. I'm in the middle of nowhere, Oregon, and I need to be at a rehearsal dinner in 5 hours." Harper checked his watch. It was 2 in the afternoon. "We're in Sacramento, downtown. The Marriott." He pulled out his own phone, dialing his assistant. "Jennifer, I need you to charter a helicopter to my current location immediately. Flight plan to Sacramento Executive Airport, 2 passengers." He listened for a moment. "I don't care what it costs. I need it here in the next 30 minutes. He hung up and looked at Riley's stunned expression. "What? You're just chartering a helicopter? You need to get to Sacramento. I'm not letting you miss your sister's wedding because of a malfunction on my plane. This is insane. I can rent a car, drive there. It's a 7-hour drive from here. You'd never make the rehearsal dinner." He paused. "Besides, I don't have anywhere else to be until Monday. Might as well make sure you get there safely. You're coming with me." Harper hadn't actually thought that through, but now that he'd said it, he realized he meant it. "Someone needs to make sure you don't panic on the helicopter too." "I wasn't panicking. I was managing my anxiety." "Is that what we're calling it?" She glared at him, but there was no heat in it. "Fine. Thank you for the helicopter and for talking me through the landing. Thank you for giving me something to focus on besides my own very carefully managed anxiety." Riley smiled, and Harper felt something shift in his chest. It was a good smile, genuine and warm, transforming her whole face. He realized with a start that she was beautiful, not in the polished way of the women who usually circulated in his world, but in a natural, unguarded way that caught him off guard. The helicopter arrived 43 minutes later, sleek and black. Harper helped Riley aboard, noting the way she took a deep breath before climbing in. "You really don't like flying, do you?" "It's not my favorite activity, no." "So you regularly get on planes despite being terrified?" "Being afraid of something isn't a reason not to do it. My whole career requires travel." Harper found himself impressed. He knew plenty of people who let their fears dictate their choices, who stayed safe and comfortable rather than pushing themselves. Riley clearly wasn't one of them. The flight to Sacramento was smooth, the landscape unfolding beneath them in shades of green and gold. Riley spent most of it staring out the window, and Harper spent most of it watching her, wondering why he couldn't seem to look away. They landed just after 5. Harper had Jennifer arrange for a car to be waiting, a black SUV that whisked them toward downtown. Riley checked her phone again and winced. "Problem." My sister wants to know who I'm bringing to the rehearsal dinner. You told her about me. I told her I was in a plane that made an emergency landing and that the owner chartered me a helicopter to make sure I got here on time. She has questions. Reasonable questions. Riley typed something, then put the phone away. She thinks you're my boyfriend. Harper's eyebrows rose. You didn't correct her. I will at dinner. I just need her to stop panicking about whether I'm okay. She looked at him apologetically. I should probably drop you at a hotel. You've done more than enough. What time is the dinner? 7. That gives you 2 hours. Barely enough time to shower and change, and I'm already here, so I might as well attend, unless you don't want me there. Riley stared at him. You want to come to my sister's rehearsal dinner? You don't even know us. I know you. We survived a plane crash together. Emergency landing. Controlled emergency landing. He grinned. Besides, I'm curious to meet the sister you helped raise. This is completely insane. Probably. Is that a no? She was quiet for a long moment, studying him with those sharp lawyer eyes, trying to figure out his angle. Harper didn't have one, not really. He just knew that he wasn't ready to say goodbye yet, that the thought of dropping her off and flying back to New York felt wrong in a way he couldn't articulate. Finally, Riley said, "Okay, but you're going to need different clothes. That suit is rumpled from the landing." Harper looked down at his Tom Ford suit, which did indeed look worse for wear. "Fair point. Driver, find me the nearest upscale men's store." 20 minutes later, Harper emerged from a boutique in a charcoal gray suit that fit nearly as well as his bespoke ones. Riley had waited in the car, and when he climbed back in, she gave him an appraising look. "Better. Much. Though you didn't have to buy a whole new suit." "I'm attending a wedding weekend. I'll need more than one outfit." He said it casually, but he saw her eyes widen. "The wedding's tomorrow. You're not actually staying for that." "Why not? I have nothing scheduled until Monday. And you said Sacramento to New York is at least a 6-hour flight." "If I leave tomorrow night, I'll be back in plenty of time." "Harper, this is my sister's wedding. You can't just crash it because you're bored." "I'm not bored. I'm interested." "In what?" "In seeing this through. We started this day together on a malfunctioning plane. I'd like to finish it by making sure you get to celebrate your sister's happiness." He paused. "Unless I'm overstepping, if you want me to leave, I will." Riley opened her mouth, closed it, then laughed. "You're the strangest person I've ever met. I'm going to take that as a compliment." "It wasn't meant as one. Too late. I'm taking it anyway." The car pulled up to the Marriott, and Harper followed Riley inside. She stopped at the front desk to get her room key, and Harper booked a suite for himself. The clerk's eyes widened at his black Amex, and he saw Riley notice the interaction, saw her filing it away. "I need to shower and change," she said when they reached her floor. "The dinner's in the Madison Ballroom at 7. I'll meet you there." She hesitated, then said, "Thank you for everything today. I know I keep saying it, but I mean it." "You're welcome. Now go get ready, and Riley, try to relax. The hard part is over." In his suite, Harper showered quickly and changed into the new suit, pairing it with a crisp white shirt and navy tie. He studied himself in the mirror, wondering what the hell he was doing. He didn't crash strangers' weddings. He didn't extend weekends for people he'd just met. He ran a billion-dollar company, and his time was carefully scheduled months in advance. But when he thought about flying back to New York tonight, leaving Riley to navigate her sister's wedding alone after the trauma of the day, something in him rebelled. He arrived at the ballroom at 6:55. A small group was already gathered, maybe 20 people, casual and warm. He spotted Riley immediately, transformed from the exhausted lawyer on the plane to someone vibrant in a deep blue dress that brought out her eyes. She was talking to a younger woman who had to be Rebecca, the family resemblance clear in the shape of their faces, the way they gestured when they talked. Riley saw him and waved him over, and Harper felt every eye in the room turn his direction. "Everyone, this is Harper Kingston." "Harper, this is my sister Rebecca, her fiancé David, and pretty much everyone important in our lives." Rebecca hugged him, which surprised Harper. "Thank you for getting my sister here safely. She told me about the plane." "I'm just glad everyone's okay," Harper said. David shook his hand with a firm grip. "Riley says you own a construction company, development and construction. We build commercial properties primarily." "He's being modest," Riley interjected. "Kingston Development builds skyscrapers." "That new building in Manhattan, the one that looks like a crystal, that's his." Harper shot her a look. "You looked me up, in the car. I wanted to make sure you weren't a serial killer before I brought you to meet my family. And the verdict, still out." But she was smiling. Dinner was casual, Italian food served family style, and Harper found himself seated between Riley and her father, a weathered man in his early 60s who watched Harper with shrewd eyes. "So you just happened to be flying to Sacramento?" Robert Jensen asked. "No, sir. I was flying to Los Angeles. We diverted when the engine failed, and you decided to stay for a wedding." "I decided to make sure Riley got here safely. The wedding is a bonus." Robert studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "You seem like a good man." "I try to be." Across the table, Rebecca was watching them with undisguised interest. When she caught Harper's eye, she leaned forward. "How long have you two known each other?" Riley choked on her wine. "Becca, I told you, we met today." "On the plane," Rebecca said. "I know, it's very romantic." "It was an emergency landing. There's nothing romantic about terror." "But he held your hand through it." "How do you know that?" "You told me. In your text." Riley turned to glare at Harper, who held up his hands innocently. "I didn't say anything." The evening continued like that, warm and teasing, and Harper found himself relaxing in a way he rarely did. These people weren't impressed by his money or his success. They cared that he'd helped Riley, that he'd made sure she got here. It was refreshingly simple. After dinner, there was dancing, and Rebecca's father claimed the first dance with her. Harper watched Riley watching them, saw the sheen of tears in her eyes. "You miss your mom," he said quietly. "Every day, but especially days like this. She would have loved David. She would have loved all of this. I think she'd be proud of you, making sure Rebecca had the childhood she deserved, building your own career, being here for the big moments." Riley looked at him, surprised. "That's a kind thing to say. It's a true thing." He held out his hand. "Dance with me." "Why?" "Because you look like you need a distraction, and I'm reasonably good at those." She took his hand and let him lead her onto the dance floor. The song was slow, something soft and romantic, and Harper pulled her close, one hand at her waist, the other clasping hers. She fit against him perfectly, her head just below his chin. "This is surreal," Riley murmured. "This morning I was in a conference room in Manhattan. Now I'm in Sacramento dancing with someone I met during a plane emergency. Life's funny that way. You're very calm about all of this." "About what?" "The fact that your plane nearly crashed, that you're at a stranger's rehearsal dinner, all of it." Harper considered that. "I learned a long time ago that you can't control everything. Sometimes you just have to roll with what life throws at you." "Is that how you built your company? By rolling with it?" "No. I built my company through careful planning, strategic risks, and working 20-hour days for 5 years straight. But somewhere along the way, I learned that the best moments are usually the unplanned ones." Riley pulled back slightly to look at him. "Is this one of those moments?" "Yeah," Harper said, realizing it was true. "I think it is." The song ended, but neither of them moved for a beat too long. Then Rebecca was there, pulling Riley away for sister photos, and Harper found himself talking to David about teaching, discovering the man had a sharp wit and genuine passion for education. The party wound down around 10. Harper walked Riley to her room and they stood in the hallway, neither quite ready to say goodnight. "You're really staying for the wedding tomorrow?" Riley asked. "If the invitation still stands." "It does. The ceremony's at 2, reception at 5. "Then I'll be there." "Harper, why are you doing this?" He looked at her, really looked, and decided on honesty. "Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since you gasped when the plane lurched. Because you're brave and smart and you clearly love your family fiercely. Because today was terrifying and extraordinary and I'm not ready for it to end yet." Riley's breath caught. "That's very direct. You said you appreciate honesty." "I do. I just wasn't expecting it, so I should go." "No," she said it quickly, then laughed at herself. "No, you should stay. For the wedding, and maybe we can have dinner after, just the two of us." "I'd like that." She stood on her toes and kissed his cheek, her lips warm against his skin. "Good night, Harper." "Good night, Riley." Harper barely slept that night, his mind replaying every moment of the day. He kept coming back to the feeling of Riley's hand in his, the trust in her eyes when she'd looked at him during the landing. He'd dated plenty of women, had a few relationships that lasted months before fading away due to his work schedule or simple incompatibility. But he'd never felt this immediate pull, this sense of rightness. The next morning, he went for a run through downtown Sacramento, then had breakfast sent to his room while he answered emails and checked in with his team. Everything was running smoothly without him, which was both reassuring and slightly humbling. He'd built Kingston Development to function like a well-oiled machine, but sometimes he forgot that the machine didn't need him hovering over every gear. At 1:30, he dressed in a navy suit and headed down to the ballroom where the ceremony would take place. It had been transformed overnight, white flowers everywhere, chairs arranged in neat rows facing an arch covered in roses. Harper found a seat near the back, not wanting to intrude on family space. Riley appeared 10 minutes before the ceremony started, wearing a bridesmaid dress in pale gold that made her skin glow. She spotted him immediately and detoured from the wedding party lineup. "You came. I said I would. I wasn't sure if you'd change your mind." "I don't change my mind once it's made up." He reached out and squeezed her hand. "You look beautiful." She blushed, actually blushed, and Harper felt absurdly pleased that he could affect her that way. "I have to go line up. But save me a dance at the reception. All of them, if you want." The ceremony was lovely, traditional and heartfelt. Harper watched Rebecca and David exchange vows, saw the way they looked at each other like they were the only two people in the world. But he also found his gaze drifting to Riley, standing beside her sister, tears streaming down her face as she smiled. At the reception, Harper found himself seated at a table with some of Riley's college friends, who immediately started interrogating him about how they'd met. He told the story of the emergency landing, leaving out the part about it being his private plane, until one of them Googled him mid-conversation. "Oh my God," the woman, Sarah, said. "You're that Harper Kingston, the billionaire developer." Harper winced. "I prefer to lead with my personality." "Riley landed a billionaire," another friend, Michelle, said gleefully. "This is the best wedding ever." "We're not together," Harper corrected. "We just met yesterday." "But you want to be," Sarah said knowingly. "You haven't stopped looking at her since you sat down." Harper couldn't exactly deny that, so he changed the subject. But his eyes did keep finding Riley, who was making the rounds as a bridesmaid, talking to guests, dancing with her father, laughing with Rebecca. Finally, as the sun set and the lights dimmed for dancing, Riley made her way to his table. "I believe you promised me dances." Harper stood immediately, offering his arm. I did. They danced through 3 songs, talking and laughing, and Harper realized he was happier than he'd been in months, maybe years. There was something about Riley that made him want to be present, to pay attention to every moment instead of constantly thinking about the next meeting, the next project. "Can we get some air?" Riley asked finally, fanning herself. They slipped out to a balcony overlooking the city. The night was warm, stars visible despite the urban lights. Riley leaned against the railing and sighed contentedly. Today was perfect. Rebecca's so happy. "You did good helping raise her." "I just did what anyone would do." "No, you did what you needed to do even though you were grieving too. That takes strength." Riley turned to look at him. "You're very perceptive." "I pay attention. I've noticed." She paused. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything?" "Why aren't you married or in a relationship? You're successful, attractive, clearly capable of being charming when you want to be. What's the story?" Harper laughed. "That's very direct." "You said you appreciate honesty." She threw his words back at him. "Fair. The truth is, I've been focused on building my company for the last decade. I've dated, but nothing serious. Most people in my world are interested in what I can give them, not who I actually am. It gets exhausting. And you think I'm different. I know you are. You didn't even know who I was until after you'd already decided I was worth talking to. You were more concerned about making your sister's wedding than impressing me. To be fair, I was mostly terrified we were going to crash. Even then, you were brave. You're real. That's rare." Riley moved closer, and Harper's heart rate picked up. "I think you're rare too. Most billionaires wouldn't have held a stranger's hand through an emergency landing, or chartered a helicopter to help them make a rehearsal dinner, or stayed for a wedding they weren't invited to. Technically, Rebecca invited me. After I told her you were coming. They were inches apart now, and Harper could smell her perfume, something light and floral. "Riley, I'm going to kiss you now. If you don't want me to, you should say so." "I want you to," she whispered. Harper cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, soft at first, then deeper when she made a small sound of pleasure and pressed closer. Her arms went around his neck, and he wrapped his around her waist, pulling her against him. The kiss was everything he'd imagined and more, sweet and passionate and right. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Riley laughed shakily. "Wow." "Yeah," Harper agreed. "Wow. So what happens now? You live in New York, I live in New York. We could actually see each other again." "I'd like that. A lot. But," Harper hesitated, "but I travel constantly. My schedule is insane. I'm not good at relationships, Riley. I get absorbed in work and forget to call. I miss birthdays and important events. I don't want to promise you something I can't deliver." Riley pulled back, studying him. "Are you trying to talk me out of this before it even starts?" "I'm trying to be honest about who I am and what I can offer." "What if what you can offer is enough? What if I'm not looking for someone to be available 24/7? I travel for work too." "My schedule is also insane. Maybe we're actually perfect for each other." Harper felt hope bloom in his chest. "You really think so?" "I think we survived a plane emergency together. Everything else is manageable. Emergency landing." "Controlled emergency landing," she corrected with a grin. Harper kissed her again, longer this time, until someone cleared their throat behind them. They broke apart to find Rebecca standing there, looking far too amused. "Sorry to interrupt, but they're about to cut the cake and I need my maid of honor." "I'll be right there," Riley promised. Rebecca looked between them and smiled. "I like him. Don't let this one get away." After she left, Riley turned back to Harper. "My sister has spoken." "She has good instincts, she does." Riley took his hand. "Come on. You're going to help me make sure she doesn't smash cake in David's face." She promised she wouldn't, but I don't trust that look in her eye. The rest of the reception passed in a blur of dancing and laughter. Harper met what felt like Riley's entire extended family, all of whom seemed determined to give him the third degree. By the time the party wound down around midnight, he felt like he'd been through a very friendly interrogation. Riley walked him to his suite, and they stood in the hallway much like the night before, neither wanting the evening to end. "When do you fly back to New York?" she asked. "Whenever I want, the benefit of having your own plane." "Well, when it's working." He paused. "What about you? Monday morning, early flight. Come with me tomorrow instead. We can fly back together." Riley bit her lip. "That's probably not a good idea." "Why not?" "Because I'm already falling for you way too fast, and spending more time with you is only going to make it worse." Harper's heart soared. "What if I'm already falling too? Are you?" "Yeah, I really am." Riley closed the distance between them and kissed him, soft and sweet. "Okay. I'll fly back with you. But we're taking things slow once we're in New York." Agreed. Real dates, getting to know each other properly, not just the crisis version of each other. "Deal." Harper kissed her forehead. "Get some sleep. We'll leave around noon." But Riley didn't move. "Or I could come in, for a drink, or just to talk more." Harper wanted that more than almost anything, but he shook his head. "If you come in, I'm not going to want you to leave, and you're exhausted. Tomorrow we'll have all the time in the world. You're a better person than I am." "I'm really not. I'm just thinking long term. If we're doing this, I want to do it right." Riley smiled, soft and genuine. "Okay, tomorrow then." Harper barely slept again, this time from excitement rather than confusion. He kept replaying the kiss, the feeling of Riley in his arms, the way she'd said she was falling for him. It should have terrified him. He'd built his entire life around control and careful planning. This was neither of those things, but it felt right in a way nothing else ever had. The next morning, he arranged for a car to take them to the airport where his backup plane was now waiting, the Gulfstream having been towed to a hangar for repairs. Riley met him in the lobby at 11:30, looking fresh despite the late night. "Ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be. Though I'm still not great with flying. I'll hold your hand the whole way if you want. I might take you up on that." The flight back to New York was smooth, no engine failures or emergency landings. Riley did indeed hold his hand during takeoff, and Harper found he didn't mind at all. They spent the flight talking, learning about each other properly. Harper told her about growing up in Connecticut, the son of a structural engineer who taught him to see buildings as puzzles to be solved. About starting his company at 23 with a small inheritance and a lot of ambition. About the sacrifices he'd made, the relationships he'd let slip away because work always came first. Riley told him about Georgia, about her mother's illness and death, about putting herself through college on scholarships and sheer determination. About law school, about discovering she was good at the intricate dance of mergers and acquisitions, about the loneliness of success, of being the only one from her small town who'd made it big in the city. "You ever regret it?" Harper asked. "Leaving?" "Sometimes. But then I think about the alternative, staying in a town where everyone knew me as the poor girl whose mom died, where my potential was limited by geography and opportunity. I wanted more. That's not a bad thing. It's not. But it's okay to miss home too." "Do you miss Connecticut?" Harper considered. "I miss the simplicity of it. I don't miss the expectations. My father wanted me to join his firm, work my way up slowly, retire at 65 with a comfortable pension. He thinks what I've built is reckless." "Is it?" "Probably. But it's mine." They landed at Teterboro just after 9 p.m. New York time. Harper had arranged for a car and he gave the driver Riley's address first. "I want to see you tomorrow," he said as they pulled up to her building in the Upper West Side. "I have meetings all day. Dinner then." "Let me take you somewhere nice." Riley smiled. "Okay, but somewhere we can actually talk, not one of those places where people go to be seen. I know just the spot. He walked her to her door, kissed her goodnight, and forced himself to get back in the car before he could follow her inside. The driver gave him a knowing look in the rearview mirror. "Good night, sir," he asked. "The best," Harper said. He took Riley to a small Italian restaurant in the West Village, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. She laughed when she saw it. "This is perfect. Not too humble for a billionaire. It's exactly humble enough." They talked for hours, the conversation flowing as easily as it had on the plane. Harper learned that Riley was obsessed with true crime podcasts, that she ran marathons to clear her head, that she secretly wanted to write a novel someday. Riley learned that Harper played piano, that he volunteered teaching construction skills to at-risk youth, that his biggest fear was becoming so successful he forgot what mattered. "I don't think you need to worry about that," Riley said, reaching across the table to take his hand. "Why not?" "Because you chartered a helicopter for a stranger. Because you stayed for a wedding you had no obligation to attend. Because you're here with me instead of working, which I suspect is unusual for you." "It is," Harper admitted. "I usually work until midnight, start again at 6. "So what changed?" "You did." It became their pattern. Harper would finish work by 7 and they'd meet for dinner or drinks or just walks through the city. On weekends, they explored neighborhoods, found hidden parks, discovered tiny museums. Harper introduced Riley to his world slowly, taking her to a gallery opening for a building he'd developed, to a charity gala where he was receiving an award. Riley introduced him to hers, dragging him to a dive bar where lawyers congregated, to a book club she'd been part of for 3 years. They fit together in ways Harper had never experienced. Riley understood his drive because she shared it. She didn't resent his work hours because hers were just as intense. When he had to fly to London for a week, she flew to Chicago for depositions. They texted constantly, video called every night, and Harper found himself counting the hours until he could see her again. 2 months in, Riley stayed over for the first time. Harper had cooked dinner in his penthouse, something simple but homemade, and they'd eaten on the terrace overlooking Central Park. When it started to rain, they'd moved inside and somehow ended up on his couch, kissing until neither could breathe. "Stay," Harper murmured against her lips. "I don't have clothes for tomorrow." "Wear mine." Riley pulled back to look at him, her eyes searching. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." She stayed, and it was everything Harper had hoped for and more. Waking up with Riley in his arms felt right in a way that made every other relationship he'd ever had pale in comparison. She was still there when he woke at 6, curled into his side, her hair spread across his pillow. He must have been staring because her eyes fluttered open. "Morning. Morning. Sleep okay? Better than I have in years." She stretched, unself-conscious in one of his T-shirts. "What time is it?" 6:15. "Why are you awake?" "Habit. I usually get up at 6 to work out before the day starts." Riley groaned. "You're one of those people. You run marathons." "You're also one of those people." "That's different. Running is meditative. Morning workouts are just showing off." Harper laughed and pulled her closer. "Stay, I'll make you breakfast. Now you're trying to be perfect." "Is it working?" Annoyingly, yes. They fell into a rhythm. Riley kept clothes at Harper's place, and he kept some at hers, though they spent most nights at his penthouse. Her lease was up in October, and Harper wanted to ask her to move in properly but held back, worried about pushing too fast. Then Riley's father had a heart attack. Harper was in a meeting when she called, and he stepped out immediately when he saw her name. "Hey, what's up? It's Dad." Her voice was shaking. "He's in the hospital. Heart attack. Rebecca said it's bad, Harper. I need to get to Georgia. I'll have the plane ready in an hour. Pack a bag." I'll pick you up. You don't have to come. I'm coming. Don't argue. They were in the air by 3, Riley silent and pale beside him. Harper held her hand and didn't try to fill the silence with empty reassurances. Sometimes there was nothing to say. Robert Jensen survived, but it was close. Harper watched Riley hold it together for her sister, for her father being strong when they needed her. But at night, in the hotel room Harper had booked, she'd collapse into his arms and let herself break. "I can't lose him too," she whispered one night. "Not yet. Not like this." "You're not going to. He's strong. He's going to recover." "You can't know that." "No, but I believe it. And you should too." They stayed in Georgia for a week, Harper working remotely while Riley coordinated with doctors and helped Rebecca handle everything. He met Riley's extended family, her childhood friends, saw the town she'd grown up in. It was small and sweet, and he understood why she'd left but also why part of her still missed it. When Robert was finally stable enough for them to return to New York, he pulled Harper aside. "You're good for her," he said. "I wasn't sure at the wedding. Thought maybe you were just some rich guy playing around, but you've been here every day. You've taken care of my girls. That means something." "I love her, sir," Harper said, realizing it was true, that it had probably been true since she'd grabbed his hand on that failing plane. Robert nodded. "I know, does she?" "Not yet." "Why not? Waiting for the right moment." "Don't wait too long, life's short, trust me on that." Back in New York, things shifted. Riley moved in without either of them officially discussing it. Her things just gradually migrated to Harper's place, until one day she realized she hadn't been to her apartment in 2 weeks. "I think I live here now," she said, looking around Harper's penthouse. "Is that okay?" "Yeah, it's more than okay." She paused. "I love you, you know." Harper crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms. "I love you too, have for a while now." "Since when?" "Since you made me promise we were going to survive the landing. Since you trusted me when you had no reason to." Riley kissed him, soft and sweet. "We should probably talk about logistics. My lease is up. We should make this official. Move in with me, officially, completely. Make this place ours instead of mine." "Okay, yes, absolutely yes." That Christmas, Harper closed the New York office for the week between Christmas and New Year's, something he'd never done. He and Riley flew to Georgia to spend the holidays with her family. Robert was doing well, back to his normal routines with some dietary changes and medication. Rebecca was pregnant, glowing with the news. On Christmas Eve, Harper and Riley went for a walk through her old neighborhood, past the elementary school where she and Rebecca had studied, past the library where she'd spent countless hours dreaming of bigger things. "Thank you for bringing me back here," Riley said. "I think I needed to remember where I came from. I wanted to see it, to understand all of you." They stopped at a small park, empty in the winter cold. Harper turned to face her, his heart pounding. "Riley Jensen, I was on 100 flights before the one where I met you, probably 1,000 before that if you count commercial. But that flight, that emergency landing, was the best thing that ever happened to me." "Harper, what are you doing?" He dropped to one knee, pulling out the ring he'd been carrying for 2 weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. "I'm asking you to marry me. I'm asking you to keep living with me, keep challenging me, keep making me want to be better. I'm asking you to trust me with your heart the way you trusted me during that landing." Riley was crying, her hands over her mouth. "Are you serious?" "Completely. I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life proving it. So what do you say? Will you marry me?" "Yes. Oh my God, yes." Harper slipped the ring on her finger, a princess-cut diamond that caught the winter light, and stood to kiss her. She was laughing and crying simultaneously, the same way she had after the landing, and Harper thought maybe that's what love was. Choosing to trust someone when everything felt out of control, believing they'd see you through to the other side. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony in Central Park, Rebecca as maid of honor, Harper's younger brother Henry as best man. Robert walked Riley down the aisle, strong and healthy. It was intimate and perfect, everything they both wanted. The reception was bigger, held at one of Harper's buildings with views of the entire city. But Harper barely noticed the hundreds of guests, the elaborate decorations, the expensive champagne. He only saw Riley, radiant in her dress, laughing with her sister, dancing with her father. "Happy?" he asked when they finally had a moment alone, deliriously. "You." More than I knew was possible. They honeymooned in Italy. 2 weeks of doing absolutely nothing but eating amazing food, exploring ancient cities, and remembering how to slow down. Harper's team handled everything at work, and Riley's firm covered her cases. The world kept turning without them, which was both humbling and liberating. "We should do this more often," Riley said one afternoon as they sat in a cafe in Florence. "Honeymoon in Italy. Take time off. Remember there's more to life than work." "You're right. What if we made a rule? 1 week every quarter minimum. No work, just us." "I'd like that." They kept that promise. Every quarter they'd disappear for a week, sometimes exotic locations, sometimes just holed up in the penthouse ignoring the world. It became their anchor, the thing that kept them connected even when work threatened to pull them apart. A year into their marriage, Riley made partner at her firm. Harper threw her a party that rivaled some weddings, bursting with pride. 2 years in, Harper's company went public, making him one of the youngest billionaires in the country. Riley kept him grounded, reminding him that money was just a tool, not a measure of worth. 3 years in, they started talking about kids. "I want them," Riley said one night, curled up beside him in bed. "I wasn't sure I did for a long time. My career always came first, but with you I want the whole thing. The chaos and the joy and the sleepless nights." "How many?" Harper asked, running his fingers through her hair. 2, maybe 3. Enough that they have siblings the way Rebecca and I did. What about you?" "I want whatever you want, though I'm hoping for at least one girl who looks like you." Riley laughed. "And at least one boy who looks like you. Between the two of us, we should be able to manage that." They started trying that month. It took 6 months, during which Riley stressed and Harper tried to keep her calm, reminding her that these things took time. When the test finally came back positive, Riley cried for an hour straight, alternating between joy and terror. "What if I'm not good at this?" she asked. "You helped raise Rebecca. You're going to be amazing." "That's different. She wasn't a baby. Babies are so small and fragile." "We'll figure it out together. That's what we do, remember? We figure things out." Their daughter, Emma Rose Kingston, was born on a snowy January morning, 8 pounds of screaming, beautiful chaos. Harper held her and felt something in his chest crack open, a love so fierce it scared him. "We made a person," he said, awed. "We did," Riley agreed, exhausted but radiant. "And she's perfect." Emma was followed 2 years later by a son, James Robert Kingston, named for both grandfathers. And then, because apparently they loved chaos, another girl 3 years after that, Lily Grace Kingston. Their penthouse transformed into a disaster zone of toys and art projects and noise. Harper's office hours shifted to accommodate school pickups and bedtime stories. Riley cut back to 4 days a week, then eventually left the firm to start her own boutique practice focused on pro bono work for small businesses. "I thought I'd miss it," she confessed one night after the kids were asleep. "The prestige, the big cases, but this feels right. I'm helping people who actually need it, and I'm here for the kids. I don't feel like I'm missing anything anymore." "You're happier," Harper observed. "I am. Are you? Your life changed pretty dramatically, too." Harper thought about it. About the man he'd been on that plane, driven and successful but fundamentally alone. About who he was now, surrounded by noise and mess and love. "I'm happier than I ever imagined being. You changed everything, Riley. That emergency landing changed everything." "Controlled emergency landing," she corrected with a grin, the old joke still making them both smile. Years passed. Emma started kindergarten, then James, then Lily. Harper stepped back from day-to-day operations at Kingston Development, promoting his COO and taking on more of a chairman role. He wanted to be present for his kids in a way his own father hadn't been. Wanted to make it to soccer games and piano recitals and parent-teacher conferences. Riley's practice grew steadily, her reputation for being brilliant and compassionate spreading through the small business community. She won awards, gave speeches, mentored young lawyers. But she was always home for dinner, always present for the important moments. On their 10th anniversary, Harper surprised Riley by recreating their first date at the small Italian restaurant in the West Village. Same table, same checkered tablecloth, same candles in wine bottles. "This is where I knew," Riley said, looking around with misty eyes. "Knew what? That you were it for me. That I'd found the person I wanted to build a life with. Even though we just met a few days before." Maybe because we just met. There was no history, no baggage, just two people who saw each other and chose to take a chance. Harper raised his glass. "To taking chances. To emergency landings," Riley countered. "Controlled emergency landings." They clinked glasses and drank, and Harper thought about that terrified woman on his plane, about the choice to talk to her instead of hiding in the cockpit, about every small decision that had led to this moment. To 10 years of marriage, 3 incredible kids, a life richer than anything he'd built with steel and concrete. "I'd do it all again," he said. "The emergency landing, all of it. Every moment. Even the scary parts, especially the scary parts because they led me to you." Riley reached across the table to take his hand, the same way she had on that plane, seeking anchor and finding it. "Me too. Every single moment." Their kids grew. Emma became a voracious reader, always with her nose in a book. James developed Harper's love of building, constantly constructing elaborate structures from whatever he could find. Lily was pure chaos, creative and wild and utterly fearless. Harper and Riley navigated it all together, the triumphs and the struggles, the sleepless nights and the moments of pure joy. They fought sometimes, usually about work-life balance or parenting strategies, but they always talked it through, always remembered that they were on the same team. On their 15th anniversary, Harper booked the same hotel in Sacramento where they'd stayed for Rebecca's wedding. The kids stayed with Rebecca and David, who now had 4 kids of their own. Harper and Riley spent the weekend remembering where they'd fallen in love, walking the same streets, visiting the same ballroom where they'd first danced. 15 years, Riley marveled. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, sometimes it feels like forever. Good forever or bad forever. The best forever. The kind where I can't imagine my life without you in it. They stood on the same balcony where they'd first kissed, the city lights twinkling below. Harper pulled Riley close, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume. "You ever think about that day?" he asked. "About what would have happened if the engine hadn't failed, sometimes. I probably would have made Rebecca's rehearsal dinner without all the drama, would have gone back to New York, back to my regular life. And never met me, and never met you." She turned in his arms to face him. "I don't believe in fate, not really. But that day, Harper, it feels like fate. Like the universe conspired to put us on that plane together. Maybe it did. Or maybe we just got lucky. Either way, I'm grateful. For the emergency landing, for your kindness, for every moment since." Controlled emergency landing, Harper corrected, and they both laughed. 20 years after that day, they stood in front of Harper's rebuilt Gulfstream, the one that had nearly crashed but had been fully restored. Harper had kept it, unable to let go of the plane that had changed his life. "Are you sure about this?" Riley asked, eyeing the plane nervously. "It's been completely overhauled. New engines, new everything. It's safer than ever." "That's not what I'm nervous about." Harper understood. They hadn't been on a private plane together since that day, always flying commercial despite the inconvenience. Some memories were too powerful to revisit casually, but today was special. Emma was graduating from Columbia, Riley's alma mater. James was finishing his junior year at MIT. Lily was thriving in high school, already talking about architecture programs. Their family had grown, evolved, succeeded beyond their wildest dreams, and Harper wanted to face this fear with Riley by his side, the way they'd faced everything else. They boarded together, settling into the familiar leather seats. The pilot, a woman named Sarah who'd been with Harper for 5 years, gave them a reassuring smile. "Ready, Mr. Kingston?" Harper looked at Riley, who took a deep breath and nodded. "Ready." The takeoff was smooth, the flight uneventful. Riley held Harper's hand anyway, and he didn't mind. They flew over the same route they'd taken that fateful day, and Harper pointed out landmarks, telling stories about projects his company had built, about the ways New York had changed. "We've had a good life," Riley said quietly, "the best. No regrets, not a single one." Riley smiled, that same genuine smile that had captivated him 20 years ago. "Just one." Harper's heart clenched. "What?" "That I didn't kiss you on the balcony sooner. We wasted a whole day." He laughed, relieved and delighted. "We made up for it. We did. We really did." They landed in New York safely. No emergencies, no drama. Just a simple flight that proved they'd moved past the fear, that they could reclaim even this piece of their story. That night, at Emma's graduation party, surrounded by family and friends, Harper stood to give a toast. He looked at his daughter, brilliant and accomplished, at his sons thriving in their own ways, at Riley, still the most beautiful woman in any room, and felt overwhelming gratitude. 20 years ago, he began, I was on a plane that made an emergency landing. I met someone that day who changed everything. She was scared, but she was brave. She trusted me when she had no reason to. And every day since, she's made me want to be worthy of that trust. Riley was crying, and so was Emma. James looked uncomfortable with the emotion, and Lily was filming on her phone. "Life is unpredictable," Harper continued. "Plans fail. Engines malfunction. Things don't go the way we expect. But sometimes, those unexpected moments lead us exactly where we need to be, to the people we need to meet, to the life we're meant to live." He raised his glass. "To emergency landings, to second chances, to love that survives anything life throws at it. And to Emma, who represents the absolute best of what her mother and I built together. We love you, sweetheart. Congratulations." Everyone drank, and then Rebecca stood, adding her own toast, and then David, and then the evening dissolved into laughter and stories and celebration. Later, after everyone had left and the kids were in bed, Harper and Riley sat on their terrace, looking out over the city they'd made their home. "Thank you," Riley said softly. "For what?" "For being on that plane. For talking to me. For staying for the wedding. For every choice you made that led us here. Thank you for trusting me. For taking a chance on someone you just met. For building this life with me." Riley leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the lights of the city blink and glow. Somewhere below, other people were living their lives, making choices, taking chances. Maybe some of them were boarding planes, nervous about the flight. Maybe some of them would meet someone who changed everything. Harper hoped they would. He hoped everyone got at least one moment like the one he'd had, one unexpected twist that led to everything good. "I love you," he said, the words as natural as breathing after 20 years. "I love you too," Riley responded, the same way she had countless times before. And in that moment on that terrace, in that life they'd built from an emergency landing and a choice to be kind to a stranger, Harper Kingston was completely, perfectly happy. The years that followed were full and rich. They traveled the world with their kids, showing them the places they'd explored together. They celebrated anniversaries and birthdays, weathered illnesses and setbacks, supported each other through career transitions and the normal chaos of raising a family. Emma became a journalist, investigating corporate corruption with the same fearlessness her mother had shown in her legal career. James joined Kingston Development, bringing fresh ideas and sustainable practices to the company his father had built. Lily studied architecture, determined to design buildings that were both beautiful and environmentally responsible. Harper and Riley became grandparents when Emma married a fellow journalist and had twins, a boy and a girl. They were ridiculous with the babies, spoiling them shamelessly, laughing at how their own kids rolled their eyes. "We've become our parents," Riley said one afternoon, watching Harper make silly faces at his granddaughter. "Is that a bad thing?" "No, it's perfect." On their 30th anniversary, they returned to Sacramento for Rebecca's daughter's wedding. Standing in the same ballroom where they'd first danced, older now but still together, still in love, Harper pulled Riley close. 30 years, he marveled, and I'd do it all again. Even the scary plane ride, especially the scary plane ride. That's where it all started. They danced, and Harper thought about time, about how it moved so fast and so slow simultaneously. How 30 years could feel like a moment and an eternity. How the woman in his arms was both the terrified passenger from that plane and his wife of 3 decades, both the brilliant young lawyer and the grandmother who sang lullabies off-key. "What are you thinking about?" Riley asked. "How lucky I am. How that emergency landing was the best thing that ever happened to me." "Controlled emergency landing," she corrected automatically, and they both smiled at the old beloved joke. "Always," Harper agreed. "Always controlled as long as I have you." And as they swayed to the music, surrounded by family and love and the life they'd built from a moment of crisis and a choice to trust, Harper Kingston knew that some landings, even the emergency ones, were exactly where you were meant to be. The story of their life together would continue for many more years, full of new adventures, new challenges, new joys. But it all traced back to that day, that plane, that moment when two strangers became something more. It all traced back to an emergency landing that changed everything.